Welcome back to the Wild 7 Studios Backlot. This is part 2 on our series on cinematographer-director relationships. This one is a little different than the previous one. Our previous episode was specifically about directors and their relationships with their cinematographers. We spoke with director Naz Red and director Carolina Alvarez about the making of their feature films, what it was like working with their cinematographers, their process, how they came up with all their shots, their colors, their looks, everything for the visual styles. In this episode, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. This one, we're going to be talking to two directors who shoot their own work. That's right, this one is directors who shoot their own work. So, I'm one of those people sometimes. Sometimes I shoot my own stuff, sometimes I don't. It's a complicated gray area in whether you should shoot your own work or whether you shouldn't. I think you should sometimes, but for the most part, I don't think you should. And that's me personally. This isn't like a hard, fast rule. This is me giving my opinions and my thoughts, and this is all from my own personal perspective. I like to shoot my own stuff sometimes. I like the control. I'm a lens guy. I'm a filmmaker all through and through. I like lights. I like it all. So I like to operate the camera, and that's a big part of it. I like to have my hands on the camera. I like to frame the camera. I like to be able to move the camera. That isn't always the best for being a director, though. You can't really focus on the performances the way you should be focusing on the performances. And sometimes it's not that I can't focus on the performances. It's that I'm so focused on the performance and the shot at the same time that as the performance happens, sometimes you need something to happen in the performance. And while the performance is going on, you almost have to be formulating those things as they're going. You'll call cut, and as a director, you can give your changes, you can give your notes. When you're a cinematographer, you don't really have that time to think because you're still in the shot. You still have to finish the shot unless you just call cut, which you might really get some really upset actors and not really kind of get into a rhythm very well. I've noticed that doesn't really go too well if you call cut too often while a performer's mid-take. So there's the give and take of that. It speeds things up. It keeps your budget down. It's really great for that. There are a handful of really good filmmakers who do shoot their own work. The most famous of which I would say are probably Zack Snyder and Steven Soderbergh. They both famously shoot a lot of their own stuff. I was lucky enough to work on a Netflix job a couple years ago, a marketing thing, and Zack Snyder was there. And I got to spend 2 days listening to Zack Snyder talk about his cinematography process. I got to listen to him talk about going to Japan and buying vintage lenses. And yeah, it was amazing. It was very, very cool. I'm very, very jealous. Zack Snyder's the man. He talked about looking for Canon Dream lenses up and down the coast of Japan, and very, very, very jealous. Yeah. But those filmmakers are very special. They're very unique. And Zack Snyder and Steven Soderbergh both have combined close to 100 years of filmmaking experience behind them. So they're very special. For everyone else, I really wouldn't suggest it. Me personally, I'm trying to avoid it as much as possible. I don't like my work as much that I shoot as the work that has been shot by other people. I've worked with cinematographer Lucas Patassi, who has shot here for Mr. Naz Red. He's also done some great work for Troma Studios and a lot of other great film productions. Working with Luke has made some of the best work in my career and some of the best looking products. So it's one of those things where sticking with a cinematographer kind of makes you better. So to be a great filmmaker, I think you really do need to work with a cinematographer and learn that relationship and develop that. But it's not a be all end all. If you can't do that, learn to shoot and listen to these tips in this video. We've got director Paul Krueger, very, 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 very serious man who makes very, 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 very serious films with a good man named Dallas Schaefer and an organization called Really Serious Films. They make fantastic stuff. I love them to death. They're very good boys. The other person who we are interviewing today is a friend of Wild 7. Basically, she is Wild 7, and that's Rocio Romero. Her film Unmatched was produced by us. We'll be dropping it later this year after it does its festival run. And I sat them both down because they both shoot their own work. They're both cinematographers on the side and directors as well. And whenever they make projects, for the most part, they shoot their own stuff. I have shot for Rocio in the past. One of the very first things I ever shot was a short film for Rocio. So that is an interesting relationship that we have, where it's like I'm talking to her about working on these, and in the past I've been her cinematographer and she's been my cinematographer. So it's an interesting relationship that we have. But we'll go into all that, and then we talk about it here in the film, or in this series of interviews. But both of them give some really good feedback and some really good advice. So definitely listen to what they have to say and take it to mind. So here we go.
Okay, my name is Rocio Romero. I am a filmmaker. I am originally from Guadalajara, Mexico, but now I'm LA based. And I'm a storyteller, and I recently did both DP, cinematography, and directed Unmatched, which is like a time glitch horror with like a twist, so it's really good. Watch it.
My name is Paul Krueger. I'm originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Been in Los Angeles for 8 years. I'm a bit of a film director, some might say, and I'm the co-founder of a little production company called Really Serious Films.
And you shoot as well, right?
I shoot, I edit, I write, do crafty, grip, PA. Stunts. Yeah, I mean, pretty much all of it, whatever's got to be done.
What would you say are some of the hard or difficult things when it comes to directing and shooting at the same time?
I guess like the challenges is that you can't be like this omnipresent being. There's always something that happens on set where you have to be troubleshooting or, able to take care of certain issues that occur. So it limits you in some way to be tied to the camera, because that's multitasking. It becomes a multitasking feat. So you have to understand what your priorities are when shooting, whether it be focusing more on the directing side or on the DP side, right? Because it depends on what the moment is, where the issue comes up, and what you have to kind of yield, right? For me, for example, it's when I both DP and direct, I do all of my DP work, most of it, in pre-production. So that in production, my director side can actually focus, because the most important part for me, or aspect, is the performance, right? And I do not want to sacrifice a good performance for, sadly, to my DP side, right? For a better looking image. So it's really about understanding what the issue is and how to counterbalance it in the moment, and yielding is very important. So yes, those are maybe what might arise, but if you have a good team and a good pre-production, there's not really much to worry about.
Yeah, I think the hardest part about shooting your own projects is the bandwidth of having to cover a lot of things, where it's like you need to be responsible for the script and casting and organizing it and finding locations and deciding on props and wardrobe, while also you have to be like, okay, what lens am I going to use? What shots am I going to need? What's the shot list going to look like at this location? What's the lighting going to be like there? Do I need to bring lights? Do I need to rent lights? What time of day? So it's like you're really doing two major jobs at once, where I think it's such a luxury to be like, oh, if I was just directing or even just shooting, it's like then you can kind of live in just that world and really focus on that one thing. But, us independent filmmakers, we don't always have that luxury. Sometimes you just got to do a lot of the stuff yourself. And I would say the hardest part is definitely just you're responsible for all of it at that point. Like, you're responsible for so much of this shoot. Like, pretty much everything that's recorded is, like, on you, which also is the fun part of it, is, like, the film will live and die by your hand. By your decision to go and make this thing, because you're going to direct it and you're going to shoot it. Like, you can make this thing happen,
What are some things you do to make sure it goes good? Do you shot list? Do you plan in advance? Do you make mood boards? Like, what's your prep process to make sure things don't go bad?
Yeah, to make sure things don't go bad, I'll probably drink a lot before the shooting day, so that way whatever goes bad, I don't really notice. I'll have somebody drive me to set, because I'll be pretty much incapable of driving. No, what I'll do is it's definitely a lot of prep. I think one thing that really helps is making a shot list. I feel like this is kind of one thing that's good for the director and the shooter is like the shot list is kind of the roadmap of like what are we gonna do today? What's the to-do list of what we need to get done? So before a shoot, every single time, I'm always sitting down, I have the script, and then I just have an Excel spreadsheet. And now I've gotten pretty good with Excel spreadsheets where it's nice and organized and I'll put what the shot is, whether it's like a wide shot, medium shot, insert shot, then a little description of like, this is when Dallas walks through the door and Mark comes and slaps him in the face. You know what I mean? Like, okay, great. That's gonna be the wide shot. The medium shot would be like, okay, now we're just doing Dallas's coverage of just him, and we're gonna get his reaction, and then we're gonna do an insert of, you know, Mark putting on a glove before he slaps Dallas. And that way it's like I go into the day and I actually will take the shot list, I'll export it from Google Sheets as a PDF, and I'll set it as my phone background. That way when I'm on set, I'm like, okay, what do we need next? Here's this one shot, got it. I can see it right away, and I can kind of just go down the list. And the day is literally just going down this list of like, hey, I know we're all here to have fun and make a movie, amazing. Here's what I have to do today. Get these shots. And I do that, and I break them into scenes, and then we just march through that shot list, and that is the entire day of filming.
I shot list a lot. I diligently have to shot list because it's my only guide the day of, right? Again, I do all of the pre-production, all of my DP, the shot list, the lighting grams, even like as a director, right? The chemistry reads, everything has to be done beforehand so that I can really focus on directing and holding the camera on the day of, and do micro adjustments as I go. I really like that. That's going back to the previous question. I really like doing the micro adjustments, like both as a DP and director, because there's a lot of time that is saved when you're doing both, right? Things that you wouldn't probably communicate otherwise. If you were directing, you'd be like, it's fine, you know, for the sake of time. But when you're holding the camera or you're in control of that aspect, you can do these little tweaks, right? Micro things that help tell the story better. So shot listing is very important because it's my blueprint, it's my guide. For reference, there's a lot of sites. I use Shot Deck sometimes. And also, when you have a project in the back of your mind and you already understand kind of the aesthetic that you're gonna go for, if you find yourself watching a show, watching a movie or something else, there's a moment that you're like, oh, that looks similar to something that I want to convey, right? So you ultimately take from the media to study, analyze it, and not necessarily replicate it, but yes, be inspired by. So I think we're ultimately all inspired by the media around us. And the way I would storyboard, though, is if I have access to certain locations, I would take photographs of the specific angles, like with a similar focal length, and kind of doodle on top. You know, like do a stick figure on top of like the real photos. So everybody has a different workflow, but that works for me.
The idea of doing a mood board is nice. Sometimes I'll do like a really, really crappy mood board on like a Google PowerPoint presentation where I'm just like, here's what it is. But there's typically like one or two main like visual inspirations for it. And then with a lot of these projects, I'm also editing them. So I'm also seeing it as like, okay, when I'm in the edit, like what pieces will I need? Like, so I see it more from like an editing timeline, and I'm like, I want a shot of this, and I want a shot of that, and then I want a shot of this, and then we want a wide shot of all of that. And I just know if I get those pieces, then I can figure it out later. So I don't do a lot of like, I tried storyboarding, but it kind of took a while, and like, it was hard to get the pictures that I liked in a storyboard. So I felt like it was a lot of time just to try to find those pieces of like, find a nice picture from a movie scene that was similar. So I found it was a lot easier, and I could understand with my own language if I just had it like written out in like an Excel spreadsheet of like, here's the shot, you know, wide, medium, insert, close up, pan, tilt, description, a couple other notes of just like, hey, in this one also remember the character's going to be wearing a funny hat. Okay, we're going to need to make sure that's there. And then I'm like, this is also what f-stop I'm going to shoot at. This is the ISO that it's going to be at. And then here's the shutter speed as well. So I'll have all of that from a technical perspective. And for me, maybe that's just how I visualize it, is just like seeing it as like a bulleted list, and I can understand. But that's also the convenience of shooting and directing, is like you're the only one that needs to understand what the shot list means. Like if you get it, that's good enough. Everyone will take your lead on the day, hopefully.
I always do.
So, if you had like a perfect setup for shooting, like say a feature, what would it look like in terms of like your lenses, your camera? Would you be handheld? Would you be on a tripod, dolly? What would it look like for you if you were going to go out there today?
I love movement, right? So obviously investing in, if I had like unlimited budget, or like a higher end budget, right? I love Steadicam. I really love Steadicam. I love jibs. I love dolly, like the Chapman doorway dolly. All these things. It's like really the tools. I love vintage lenses as well, or at least vintage glass or vintage looking glass, like Cooks. Like I shot Unmatched with the Cooks S4, and they really delivered the look that I wanted, with some TIFF infiltration. So, yeah, I would have like my package. I love Sony's. I would shoot ideally with like a Sony Venice 2 with some vintage lenses, and it depends on the story, and definitely with enough gear for movement.
I think about gear and like an ideal setup very much like probably a little too realistic, to where I'm like, this is the camera that I have. And we were even saying there's Jamie or it was Adam from Mythbusters, right? Mm-hmm. Adam from Mythbusters, they had this saying with their tools where it's like you use the best tool you can afford, and then once that breaks, you only upgrade it once it breaks, and then you go and purchase the next best version of that tool that you can afford. So right now for me, that's the Sony FX3, and I'm very content with that camera. I also know that there's never enough gear. It's like you could buy the nicest camera, and a few years later, now there's an even nicer camera that you have to buy. So at some point, I just want a great camera that I can take with me on the long haul and use that camera until it breaks or doesn't operate anymore. And then at that point say, okay, how much money do I have? What's the next best camera that I can get with my current budget? And there's another school of thought, which is like you just always rent, like don't own a camera, just rent. That way you can rent the latest stuff and always have the best stuff. And I totally understand that. I just feel like that's great unless you want to shoot projects like all the time. I feel like if you want to shoot a lot, it's really good to invest in a camera. And I would just say go for whatever camera you can afford, because you'll learn all you need to know about a camera from that one camera, from that basic DSLR. You'll be able to learn everything you need to know, and then once later on down the line, say that camera breaks or you can just afford to upgrade, then when you upgrade, you're gonna really, really get a lot of value out of that upgrade because you learned all the camera skills and all the terminology and all the settings. So when you upgrade, it's gonna look even better. So ideal camera package, I don't even know enough about all this gear to say. That's where it's like, that's where a cinematographer or like a key grip or like a chief lighting technician comes in and is like, we're gonna bring in this stuff, and I'd be like, okay. But to me, that's at like a higher budget scale, to where for a lot of it, it's like, I know a handful of lights that I can bring into a set and be like, hey, we need an alien tractor beam. Like, okay, let's figure out, we need an aperture C300 for that. And let's just start there. We need one light to just shoot down from the sky. Let's start there. And a lot of these nicer higher end cameras start to do a lot of the work for you as well, to where like it just looks nice if your settings are good. If you're not overexposed, if you're not underexposed. The cameras do a lot of the heavy lifting. So part of it is like, it'll just look nice. And then if you do a nice little color grade too, that gets you pretty far.
What types of filtration do you use, just for the curious cinematographers out there? Is there any type of glass that you like or that you find interesting?
What I go for, which is, it would give you, one can say like there's no such thing as like a cinematic look, but if you're going for like a soft kind of like texturized look to a certain degree, go Blackmagic Pro Mist, which is like the basics, right? And you find those everywhere, in different brands. So and also play around. I do a lot of moody things. So I like using like pearlescent or black magic pro mist, or even like some filtrations with effects like fog and such. You do have to understand that these are going to be baked into the image. But if it's a look that you like, I suggest going for something like that, like a bit texturized. Always do tests. But what I lean in is it's usually like the black pro mists, or yeah, the black magic pro mist.
So when you shoot, do you prefer zooms or primes?
I like zooms because zooms you can run and gun a little bit more, where a prime you're kind of locked in, and then zooms give a little bit more of that flexibility where like if you're in a location and you kind of want to make changes, like you can adjust it with a zoom lens, whereas a prime lens it's like, oh, you know, the widest we have is 35 millimeters, like it's going to be hard to get this scene. You know, primes would be nice though. But I think my perfect thing is like this a perfect lens for me would be like a 25 to 225 vintage zoom lens with the thing on it, with the WT zoom in and out, to where you can do like a Wes Anderson style, like zoom from like 20 feet away. I just think they're so funny. They're so cool. It's such a creative choice. I think for dramatic stuff, prime lenses makes a lot more sense, and it's more like you get this shot, then you get this shot, then you get this shot. But we're a lot of run and gun, so for us, it's a speed thing, it's an efficiency thing, not to have to swap lenses on the day, to where if we get a really good zoom lens, like that covers all the focal lengths we need. Crank that up to like a 75 for a close-up, pull it back to like a 28 for a wide shot, and that gives us a lot of flexibility and speed, because again, if I'm directing and shooting, like I've got to go and carry a bag of lenses with me, and then I've also got to like pause and like switch lenses for every single shot, where I think at this level, you know, or even at like any level, going and just having one lens that you can shoot the entire project with really, really helps. Just one less thing to worry about.
So how do you direct actors when you're shooting as well as directing?
When directing actors, one of my favorite techniques is I'll scream at them, I'll insult them, I'll curse at them, I'll throw things at them. That's typically the best way to earn respect of the actors as quickly as possible. Is if they think you're just a total wild card, they will, you know, they'll listen, hopefully. No, I think a lot of it is like personal relationship, personal connections with people, and they're selected for this role because you're like, hey, I kind of see a little bit of this character that's being played. We think you would do that well, or I think you would do this really well. And here's some of the qualities that I notice in you that I think are really overlap with this character. And then for me, a lot of it is also like just kind of stepping back, letting the actor do their thing. And I'm very technical, where I'm like, performance is good, maybe this time say it a little louder or say it a little faster. It's kind of soft notes like that. But then mainly I'm like, also keep in mind, like, here's your frame. You know, here's what the frame is. So if we're close up, I'm like, don't move around too much because we've got a really nice shot of you in frame. If we're wider, then I'm like, okay, now we're wider. So if you do some business where you're picking up a pencil off the table, like now is the time to do that. And also the frame is going to be here and the lighting is going to hit you best from here. So make sure you land here. A lot of it is like just technically getting things to flow smoothly. And then I think the performance is like, they do that on their own. I think a lot of the actors come prepared with ideas. And I even previously found that like I would tell them what I wanted in the scene before they would show what they had already thought of for the scene. So now I'm kind of like, let's just run it one time and see the work that the actor's been doing of like, they've probably been thinking about this, especially because if I'm on set, I'm doing like, you know, multiple jobs. So I've got a lot on my plate. That actor is really just focusing on that one thing. So to give them the benefit of the doubt and be like, what have you thought of for this? Or how would you do this? Let's do that first. And then I'll come in and make little critiques. But a lot of it is more technical of like, that was really great, but make sure we land in this spot. And, you know, we'll adjust the light here, or the window is letting a lot of light in here, so if you kind of angle it a little bit this way, and then your eye line's going to be right here. So I'm really technical with it, and hopefully the actors come prepared and can bring their own unique style to the shoot as well.
So, if anyone out there was planning on shooting and directing their own film, what's some advice you would give to them?
Okay, I think that if you're gonna be shooting your own thing, just just do it. Make mistakes, because ultimately you're gonna learn from them, and it's very important that as you're learning, to take the camera and to experiment, because sometimes you don't know how to articulate a certain idea, right? And you have to physically try to make it happen and see if it's even feasible, or how did you actually make it work. And these are all tools and tricks and different kinds of like solutions that you have to specific issues or things that have worked, and it's now in your arsenal. And later on, it will help you collaborate better. Whether you're a DP, collaborate better with your director, right? Because now you have empathized. Or if you're a director, like, it goes vice versa. So I really suggest to try it out, experiment, don't be afraid, and don't be afraid of budget either, right? Because mood and emotion is everything, and that can be conceived through the tools that, like I said, the tools that you have gained, and the understanding of movement, like how does it impact psychology and the audience, like movement, the filtration, the selection of lenses, the color palette, the makeup, the wardrobe. All of these are different elements that will add to the story, right? So once you understand what is important, you're able to achieve a certain feel with a low budget, or with what you have around you, or what's feasible for you. So I really do believe that when you are low in like financial capacity, that's when the real creativity kicks in, because you make whatever you have with you work. And that makes a richer filmmaker. That really makes you rich as a filmmaker. So just grab the camera and shoot, really.
You do you. I'm thinking like advice to young filmmakers would be go and just make a ton of garbage movies and go into the woods and make them with your friends, film them in basements, film them in backyards, film them in the woods, film them in unique alleys and weird locations, and just make total crap. Just make so much crap, because eventually the crap will actually get kind of good, and then it'll get good because you actually learn a lot of the skills of how to do it, and you'll get a lot of the experience on a really low stakes level, to where you can afford to make mistakes, you can afford to mess up, you can afford to do things wrong, and you can just take it on the chin and keep going and make another project. And that's the benefit of like super low cost filmmaking. Get out there with whatever camera you can get your hands on, whatever one of your friends are available on that Saturday to help out, and just go and make something that just totally sucks. Because later down the line, when you go and make stuff that's really good, it's the stuff that really sucks that becomes like the nostalgic treasure of your filmmaking journey, and it's like some of the best stuff to look back on, So
I've noticed some people fear making bad problems, but it's almost like a good barometer to have, where it's like, if you look back at these really bad films you made early on and then you get good, you can say, well, look at how much I progressed. If you started out good and you're just good still, how much have you really progressed as a filmmaker?
yeah, it's so true. And even thinking about any sport, it's like, who just walks onto a basketball court for the first time and just starts dunking and like hitting threes? Like, nobody. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, a lot of people get hung up with making their early movies, and they're thinking like, oh, this short film has to like really be this groundbreaking thing. And I'm like, yeah, but it's your first time doing it, or it's your second time, or it's your fifth time doing it, or it's only your 10th time doing it. It's gonna be pretty horrible. But I mean that in a very encouraging way of like, just let it be trash and let it suck and just shoot for the moon anyway. And then also have this energy of like, just fail forward with it. It's not the be all end all. Like, this project, you shouldn't ride out this one project for the next 3 years. You should make this project. It's hilarious. It's awful. It's, or it's just great. And it has this great charm to it because it's shot in such like a backyard way. And then great, publish it and then move on to the next one. And that next one, you can stack all of that experience into the next one, and it'll immediately be better than the previous one. So I think just rinse and repeat that, and do that for like 10 years, imagine what you can be doing in 10 years. You'll be making like really great movies in 10 years if you just consistently keep make crap movies, for 7 years.
We want to thank Rocio and Paul for sitting down and sharing some of their experience and advice with us today. It's tricky being a cinematographer and director, but some key takeaways we have from this video are: planning is crucial. Make sure to shot list, storyboard, and prep with your actors in advance. Work within your budget. If you can get the gear, get it, but if it's going to slow you down, avoid it. And finally, don't be afraid of making mistakes. You'll learn from your mistakes, and the more you make them, the sooner you'll be a great filmmaker. From all of us at the Wild 7 Backlot, we'll see you next time.